Join Peter Grant and a host of other Celtic players in Rosie Maguire's next summer, Spain 2026, June the 4th to June the 7th. What a weekend it's going to be. Ex-players, plenty of music, plenty of crack. We'll see it out. Peter Grant, you're very welcome to the Celtic Soul podcast. You are just been announced as the first guest for the big European Celtic Festival over in Rosie Maguire's in Cabaret. Tickets are flying out the door, and they don't even know you're coming yet.
Peter, back in the door.
Peter, you must be in cloud nine this morning after Scotland's fantastic result last night. World Cup awaits, and Kieran Tierney, what a goal!
Yeah, very appropriate that Kieran got the goal, obviously, but a fantastic night. Very obviously, the emotions were up, down, roundabout, you name it. Typical Scotland. I mean, I called it last week. I thought they would lose to Greece, and I thought they would beat Denmark, but I never ever thought it'd be the way the two performances were. But it goes to show you it's all about winning, and obviously fantastic to get back to a World Cup. And the goals last night were phenomenal. I mean, there's 3 world-class goals in there, so that was probably appropriate for Scotland. But very fortunate to be there with the performance-wise. But it just goes to show, as I said earlier, it's all about winning.
And Kieran Tierney off the bench. What a goal.
Phenomenal. I mean, the thing is, I'm looking at it, I thought it was a poor substitution. I didn't know how Hickey was. But I'm saying if he's injured, you've got Tony Ralston there who's a natural right back. You'd went to 2 strikers up front. You're thinking, well, you've got to get crosses in. I thought it was a little bit unnatural to put a left footer there. But by God, did it work, because Kieran read the situation exceptionally well. When the ball's been put in the box, he's ran across the line of it, obviously, and got the knockdown. It's come outside the box. And it's only a left footer. If a right footer would have been on, it probably would never have scored. The fact it was a left footer in that position, Kieran Tierney of all people, and probably it's what he richly deserves, what he's done for Scotland over the period. He's had a difficult time at Arsenal. He's come back to Celtic, and it's not been fantastic, to be fair to him. You know, we're coming on off in games and trying to get his fitness back. But a wonderful emotion for him, and obviously for the full country. So fantastic times. And as I say, brilliant, brilliant result. Now we can sit back without any playoffs or anything like that and look forward to the summertime.
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of hangovers in Scotland this morning, as there was over here in Ireland on Monday morning.
Absolutely. That was a wonderful performance as well. You know, really, I'm really delighted because they did dig in 2 big results and 2 massive results the Republic got. You know, and it was brilliant, you know, and richly deserved.
And we never saw them coming because we've had some lean times. You have to go back 10 years from Martin O'Neill was manager when we qualified for the Euros, and we had that brilliant win over the World Cup winners, the World Cup holders, Germany. So, yeah, and of course, it's always, for those looking from outside in, Celtic boys, it's always good to see Celtic players doing so well. Scales played both games and he was outstanding. And then Johnny Kenny, what game to make your debut after being called up late.
Oh, phenomenal. And listen, he richly deserved it. And he showed character. I mean, he got a bad tackle in the semi-final, and it's easy enough to pull out that as a young man when you've got games in midweek. He came back again, was fit, desperate to play, desperate to keep himself in the team. And it's fantastic for these young men. And Ireland going to America again with fantastic memories. The last time they were there, I can always remember Ray Houghton's goal. I was in actually Dublin watching that. I went over with a few friends to Dublin to watch that game, and that was phenomenal. And it was special memories for them. So the Republic as well as Scotland there, it'd be fantastic if Wales got there as well with Craig Bellamy with a Celtic connection as well. You know, it'd be absolutely brilliant if we could manage to do that as well. So here's hoping that we all get there, the boys get into the playoffs and get the results, which their last performance have richly deserved.
Well, Ireland could draw Wales in the playoffs. So interesting times. We as we record this, we wait for the draw. But yeah, closer to home now for you, Peter. Celtic are back in action on Saturday. St Mirren have had some mixed form in the league, but they've been very good in the League Cup. A brilliant semi-final against Motherwell, a brilliant win. And now we go for a strange kick-off Saturday night, 8 p.m. I'm sure the pubs will do well on Saturday. But how do you see this one going?
St Mirren have caused us problems. I know Martin's in there and it's slightly different the way he's playing. I think St Mirren, anybody that's played a back 3 actually, has caused us problems because of the way we play in front of them quite a lot. We've never asked them a lot of questions. And St Mirren do it very well. I've been disrespectful if I said the way they play. I think they play a way that suits the players they have. They know what they're doing. They're good players. They understand their roles within the team, all these things. And I think they've been phenomenal. To finish in the top 6 in the last 3 years. And as I say, the Celtic performances have probably been disappointing in the respect of that against St Mirren. And that's probably the issue that I've got with it. I think they always cause us problems, but I think the way Martin's been probably a little bit more direct. You know, the team's been a little bit more direct and made defenders defend. Excuse me, sorry, I don't know if you can see this here. I've got a cat trying to jump across me, and its name used to be Celtic. Now we've got it Moses. So, wondering what's going on here. But as I said, I think St Mirren have caused us problems. I think Stevie Robinson's a very underrated manager. You know, I'm surprised he doesn't get tipped for some of the bigger jobs it's about. I know people say because it's St Mirren, but he's done a phenomenal job there. So it'll be no easy game at Love Street. And I know it's always, listen, many memories going down there. There's always difficult games, and that's never changed. So going there on a Saturday evening, it'd be fantastic to get that 3 points, obviously, because you've got to keep the pressure on Hearts. I was in that situation many, many years ago, obviously, when Hearts had went 22 games unbeaten. And all you had to do is keep chipping away and keep winning your games and not worry what's in front of you. You've just got to keep winning your games. And if you win your games, it's very much in your hands. And obviously the first one that comes up, especially after the international break, especially the success the boys have had, I'm sure the Irish boys and the Scottish boys have a few sherbets down their neck for sure, and quite rightly so. But hopefully they'll be fully recharged, obviously, for Saturday evening.
Yeah, there is a video doing the rounds of the Irish players heading to Gibney's and Malahide, getting straight when they got off the plane. So I'm sure they had because it was an afternoon kickoff. I'm sure they got back in time for a late night in Dublin. You mentioned there, you know, you had to keep chipping away at Hearts. A long career, Peter, at Celtic, almost 500 appearances. Yeah, and the week for the weekend that's in it as well. You play for Scotland and you also coach Scotland. But that must have been 86 must have been one of the highlights of your time at Celtic.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, because it was one of these situations that, as a young man, you always dream of playing with Celtic, like everybody else does. And I was fortunate enough to live that dream. People say it many times about being a supporter with a jersey on. I can guarantee that was a fact, because that's all we did. We supported Celtic, went to the games, played with the boys' clubs. So it was always Celtic strips that I had on and whatever. And getting that opportunity to get into the first team and whatever, and then a chance to win the league that you've seen your heroes had done many, many times prior, watching games and whatever, and you just wondered what that must have felt like. And it was always a pipe dream. And then on that particular time, I thought I'd played that season, most of that season. I broke in '84 and I'd played most of that season, but then, Sod's Law, I got an injury about 6 weeks before the end of the season, missed 4 games. And the great Davie Hay actually brought me back in for the last 2 games, which was Motherwell. It was a backup game we had to play. So we had to play that on a Tuesday, a very difficult fixture at Firth Park. Played in that, come on in that one. And then on the Saturday, playing at Paisley. I just knew we had a lot of goals in the team. We had a lot of guys that could score goals. We talk about Brian McClare, such a fantastic player, fantastic goal scorer. You had Mo Johnston, I know, obviously went to the dark side in the respect of that, but there's no doubt he was a wonderful striker. And we knew Murdo McLeod had a goal, and the Tommy Burns, God rest him, had goals in them. Getting into that game as a young player with all these guys there, you always felt you could win the game. But it wasn't really up to what we'd done. We'd done our bit, we'd got to that bit. I think we'd won the last 8 on the bounce, and it was difficult to do that at that particular time because there were good sides in the league and with a lot of difficult fixtures. As I say, Hearts had went 22 unbeaten. And then get into that game, I'm looking about a dressing room, you did great Danny McGrains and the Roy Aikens and all that there, and you're thinking, these guys actually believe they can do it. And I'm sitting there as a young player at the time thinking, I can feel that. But yet again, the question was, could Dundee produce a miracle, and beat Hearts? And that was the biggest thing for us. So obviously at 4-0, at half-time, I come on in the game. David put me on, taking the great Danny McGrain off. I'm on the pitch when obviously the second half, when the noise is eerie, actually. It was really eerie because everybody's listening to the transistor radios at that particular time, and it's quiet, and the team's played ever so well, but it was surreal actually. And then you hear a sort of whimper, but the whimper at first was, we thought it was Walter Kidd, who was the captain of Hearts at that particular time. And then it came through, Kidd had scored, and everybody thought Walter Kidd, and then they realised it was Albert Kidd, who had just come on as a substitute. And then the boys are looking over at the bench, and David Provan has got his two fingers up, saying it's went to 2-0 off the bench. He's got his hands up, and the players couldn't believe it, and you could just hear the noise round. Oh, it was unbelievable. An unbelievable feeling. Me as a Celtic supporter, winning your first championship with all these fantastic players, really the team that I'd supported for be able to go and watch myself, really, from 7, 8 onwards. It was the first time you were allowed to go yourself with your friends straight after the football. You were running down to Barrafield, the lights were on, you were going in to see these guys playing, and then all of a sudden I was playing along with these guys. Paisley winning a championship medal, which is a memory that will stick with me forevermore. And me and Big Paul McGugan went to a supporters function actually in Oban Street. We went back to Celtic Park from there and then travelled all the way, as you did in the days, to go to functions on the Saturday evening. And ours was in Oban, of all places. So we had
good drive.
Oh, it was that? Well, it was a very happy drive. Thankfully, I couldn't wait to get there because I had the short straw. I had to drive, obviously. It was me who was driving. Paul had a bottle of champagne on the side of me. He was swigging away at that. And I was just desperate to get there so I could get a swig. And then we got up there and enjoyed it. It was fantastic being amongst the supporters. And I think it lets you realise how much it means to the supporters when you win anything. And that's why I say these boys nowadays never ever get sick of winning, because it's the best feeling in the world. And I've obviously tested the other side of it, when it wasn't so successful. So fantastic memories, and I'm hoping it's the same outcome this season.
And it's funny, I got a text after the Oilet match, and it was from a Celtic fan, and he said, I hope you're enjoying your Albert Kidd moment.
Yeah, you're right, 100%.
So I can imagine the players, although nothing has been won yet and they haven't qualified, but against all the odds, to come back in that group after that disappointment in Armenia, and to beat Portugal. I was at the game. It was incredible, the atmosphere. It's a long time since I experienced an atmosphere like that watching the national team. Yeah, and then to go to Hungary.
Yeah, but it shows you the guts, that they've got, because I think Hungary are a very underrated side myself. I thought they were a very good side. But honestly, it shows you guts, determination, a willingness that the Irish boys showed, as well as the Scots lads, as we spoke about earlier. It's phenomenal, but you need that in everything. Technique, tactical, all these things people talk about. Yes, it's important, of course it is. But if you don't have guts, determination, a willingness to push yourself, you'll never be successful. It doesn't matter all the talent you've got. And that's why Ireland over the years have been successful. Scotland have been so successful in the respect of that, because you never give in. If you're losing, you've got to keep going to that final whistle goes. And that was proved at the weekend. And it was phenomenal. And last night as well, obviously. And that just shows you guts, determination and character has always been a trait of both Ireland and Scotland. And long may that continue.
Yeah, and that, as the Hearts fans must have been devastated back in '86. The Hungary fans, a draw was all they needed, and to basically, almost the last kick of the ball to go out. Football can be heartbreaking, but we've endured so much heartbreak as football fans. When you do get that elation moment as a fan, obviously you've experienced it from both ends, and even in the dugout. But from a fan's point of view, from the Celtic fans in Love Street to the Irish and the Scottish fans this week, incredible. It just, the highs it gives you are incredible.
Well, if you see that, and you go back to Love Street, then you go to the Centenary season, scoring so late. It's all traits that you've got to keep going. You never give in. I mean, Scotland were played off the pitch, to be perfectly honest with you, last night and at the weekend, but they kept going. They nearly got a result on Saturday against Greece. Then again last night, they got that fortune. Really, I put a bit on this morning to win the World Cup after the performances, had, and not having that belief in them, you know what I mean? So I think there's a possibility they could win the World Cup if they keep doing what they're doing.
I love it. You mentioned '88 there, and most people, the Centenary season, it was another season, from heaven. It was like 100 years to do a double. But I think when we get caught up in the whole romantic thing about Celtic and that Centenary double, we forget how much Rangers were spending then, and the English players were banned from Europe, and these star players were coming up. They were well outspending Celtic, so that even made it more of a huge achievement.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, but not just Rangers. Aberdeen and that were very good sides then. Dundee United. You could go through them all. Hibs, Dundee. You were going to any of these places, you knew you were in a game. You know, it was really, really difficult to win leagues and cups at that particular time. And I think people don't understand that. You know, when you think of that great Aberdeen side, Dundee United got to the semi-final, were cheated in European competition. You know, the Roma. It was ridiculous, actually. And then later years we find out there was corrupt refereeing. But you could see that in the particular match. But we thought it was a typical Scottish thing, all feeling sorry for ourselves. But some of the decisions were ridiculous. But wonderful, wonderful players. So you knew every game you were in, it was really difficult to go to away games and try and win. The Centenary season was slightly different because people will always remember the last game at Celtic Park prior to the season starting. They got an absolute 5-1 with Arsenal. And I think everybody was putting their head under the pillow, fearing what was going to happen in the season. But there was just something about it. People talk about fairy tales. Big Billy was great thing for saying a fairy tale about Celtic, and he's 100% right. And the thing that he had as well, he had that charisma to be the boss. You know, people talk about coaching that. He never really coached. He had good players who knew what they were doing, knew their roles within the team. He would give you pointers or whatever, but it was all about on that pitch, picking the right players to do it. Like say Frank McAvenny coming in when he did, you know, was so important for us. But we had a mixture of youth and experience, you know, and probably the biggest thing, you had a lot of Celtic supporters in the group, you know, who were playing under that pressure of we knew what it was about. It was 100 years history. We'd want it to go down, whether it be remembered or one it was wanted to be forgotten. Thankfully, it was one that was wanted to be remembered, and it's great when you Celtic supporters talk about teams. They talk about 67. They talk about Lisbon Lions. They talk about the Centenary team. You know, and it's magical to be part of that. And sometimes you wake up and think, is that true? You know, you're part of that group of players, and we're all still great friends. The ones, unfortunately, have lost some of the special ones in it, but it was a special group of players who keep in contact with each other, and I think that's what you built then. And I think that camaraderie was shown throughout that season. You talk about the Hearts in the semi-final, and then you talk about Dundee United in the final. You know, you couldn't have wrote it any better the way it was won. Yes, for people watching and us as players, it was, you know, heart-wrenching at the time. But all of a sudden you get there, and the emotion and the success after it and the feeling you get from it. We always used to say it could only be Celtic, you know, and that's the way we put ourselves through the ringer. But we managed to find a way to get there, and that's exactly what we did that particular year in the Centenary season. Because people forget, I think we played Hibs, and at Celtic Park we drew, but they play a replay in the Scottish Cup. I think we could have been out to Stranraer, you know, as well. I think in the league match we beat Morton 1-0. I think Big Roy scored a penalty kick in the 94th minute or something like that. So there was always moments in it, but it was a team that never, ever knew it was beaten. And that was one thing. We were brought up, no matter how you're going through, if you're going through a bad time in the game or whatever, the result's not going for you, you do never throw the towel, and you've just got to keep going and keep going and keep fighting. And you maybe end up losing, but that's part of life. But there's always a possibility you could win, and that was a trait that group definitely had.
Yeah, you named two legendary managers there from Celtic players who went into the management role, and some legendary players. But you also were there during the Barron times and the changing of the old board going out and the McCann era starting, and the very emotional 1995 Scottish Cup final with your friend, your former teammate, and now your manager, Tommy Burns.
Yeah. Well, still difficult because I still talk to him every day. It's important because we were very close. Probably the time I spoke to him less was probably when he was manager, because we used to go on holiday together, the wives, kids, and then all of a sudden when he comes as manager, I'm like, oh, we need to put a break to this, which was difficult. It was difficult for him because, as I say, we spoke every day. But thankfully, Rosemary and Lorraine's kept speaking. God rest her. They spoke every day, and it was just because I didn't want him to feel an extra pressure, you know, of making decisions about it. And I know he wouldn't have, but that was just in my mind, and maybe my mind was playing tricks with me. So it was a tough few years at the fact of being the friendship wise, but it was a great period of time for me because he was very, very supportive of me as a player, and gave me the opportunity to play in the cup final when I'd been written off for saying I'd be out for 2 or 3 months. And bear in mind that the cup final was in 2 weeks' time. After the game at Tannadice, when I got the injury, he actually taken me in his car to the hospital. The two of us were in tears in the car. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I'm lying flat back, knowing that it's over. No chance of playing in the final. Tommy's driving me to the hospital in Glasgow. We're distraught because I'd missed the 85 cup final with a hamstring strain. I'd missed, obviously, the 88 with a broken foot. And then 89, thankfully, I did play in that. I missed the Wraith Rovers, obviously, when we lost, but I'd still loved to have been playing against Wraith Rovers. Missed that through suspension. So you just thought, I'm never going to get this opportunity. So when I picked up the injury, obviously, at Tannadice, it was heart-wrenching. We went to Italy as pre-cup final, done a training camp there for a week or 5 days, and I had a brace on, and I had the brace on till the Tuesday before the cup final. I was tackling the wall in the house. My wife caught me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "This feels okay." I said, "It's only one game." And she's like, "Don't be stupid, you know." So I went in the next day and I said to the gaffer, Tommy, I said, "Listen, I had this last night." I said, "I was trying to do it." And he's looking at me as if, and I know he phoned Lorraine and said to Lorraine, "Listen, I'm going to let him train tomorrow, but he's no chance. But I need to let him in his head know he's no fit." So I knew what he was going to do. He'd be watching the first thing I'd done in training to see if I grimaced, and then that'd be his angle to say, "Listen." So I had the brace off, trained that day. First thing comes up, sure it's fate. Don't connect with it well on the side of the foot. I'm like, agony, but I'm sort of grimacing, saying, "Don't look at him, don't look at him," because he will be watching. And that was fine. Get through the training session. He phones that night, he said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I feel good, actually, you know." And then I think he spoke to Lorraine and said, "Listen, we're just going to let him train tomorrow again. We know that he's struggling." Fine. Trained the next day, felt good. And then he said to me after, "Listen, be honest." And I said, "I feel fine. Could you give me tomorrow?" So he gave me the Friday before the cup final. Bear in mind, I'd brace off on the Tuesday. And he says to us, "What are you thinking?" And he said, "I know the team already down and I wasn't part of it." But as soon as he asked me that question, I never even thought about it. I just went, "I'm fit." He went, I said, "I would not say that to you if I felt I'd let you down." And he went, "Okay, you're playing then." And with a lucky and help of Brian Scott, they gave us sort of like false ligaments on the side of my knee. If you watch the lead up when the teams are standing, you'll see all the tape on the side of my leg. As Brian Scott's nearly enough put another stookie on, actually. I could hardly bend my knee, never mind anything else, and managed to play in the cup final. But I believe to this day, if Tommy wasn't the manager, I don't think any other manager would have given me that opportunity, because he knows I was desperate. He knows I'd missed the cup final. Bear in mind, when you were talking about the 89 cup final, well did I know when we won the trophy then against Rangers, when I lifted it, when we're handing out the medals, the last person I turned to is hand the trophy back to the great Tommy Burns. Well did I think that'd be the last time we'd be handing a winning trophy back to the great man. And then the next time I'm handing the trophy, thankfully, was him as manager and Paul McStay as captain, because if two guys deserved it, that was the two guys that deserved it.
Oh, here. And there's so many wonderful memories from that day. Not the greatest game you ever played in, not the greatest game Celtic ever played in, but the relief among the Celtic support to find, to get a trophy after so many years. And then the pictures, anyone can go into Google now and picture in, and it's the pictures of you and Paul and Tommy are just like, and three, dyed in the wool Celtic boys who came through the ranks and loved everything about Celtic, from being fans, players, and to share that moment. And maybe, like yourself and Paul are coming to the end of your time at Celtic. Tommy went on then and was so unlucky not to win. Probably the manager we all wanted to win a league, and but like
Well,
he took.
we lost one game. We lost one game and never won the league. We had too many draws. And unfortunately, if you remember in that period as well, the FA didn't allow George Cadetti for 5 games. And we believe, obviously, George was a great goal scorer. There was a couple of games in there where we gave people a doing, but we ended up drawing them. We'd have scored goals to win, and we'd have got that championship. But I always think, people take me the 90s and whatever, and I'll say, listen, I was fortunate enough to pull on hoops during the 90s. I would never, ever. I said, that was my period. I'd have loved to have won more trophies. Of course I would have. I'd have loved to have won more titles, for sure. I said, but that was my period. That was the way it was mapped out for us. And I wouldn't take it away. Some magical, magical memories. You know, you talk about the 95 Cup final. Yes, you're 100% right. It wasn't the greatest game by a long shot. It was just relief at the final whistle. It wasn't enjoyment. It was just relief because we'd went so long. But people forget there was only the likes of Tommy, myself, not even Tommy at the time, Paul, myself, Packy, who'd probably been through the 6 years. You know, everybody else had come in, maybe been there, some of them a year, some of them 6 months, some of them 2 years. The rest of us, the other 3 years, had been there for 6 years through the torturous time since the 98, when we missed it, penalty kicks, obviously 98 against Aberdeen. That was the last chance to win the trophy, as in Scottish Cup. And then obviously the League Cup against Wraith Rovers. I was suspended for the final, but if there's one guy who didn't deserve to miss a penalty kick, it's the captain and one of the greatest players in Paul McStay. But it did happen. So I always think these things were meant for some reason to be that way. But we just have magical memories. We still sing about Paul week in, week out. So that's how high an accolade they put him on. And as I say, I was blessed to be playing and involved with these guys. So listen, memories were meant to be that way. We have magical memories, we have magical times, not so good at times, but I wouldn't have changed anything for the world.
You're always very humble, Peter, and so is Paul McStay. When you speak to Paul, he's like for probably the best player of his generation, certainly at Celtic and in Scotland. But I always find it very humble. We done a charity dinner last year, and again, the feedback that was how humble is Peter Grant about his time at Celtic. Peter, if you could climb into the Celtic Soul time machine and it takes you back to all those years of Celtic, does it take you? Where does it take you? Does it take you back to one match or one moment?
Probably the moment. People always talk about making your debut against Rangers. That was pulling my strip on for the first time in the first team. And I always say no, it was the following week. We played Hibs at Celtic Park. And I always had one dream, was to run out to walk on in front of the Celtic supporters. That was all I wanted to do, just once. I was thankful that both grandparents who took me to the games, who run supporters buses, managed to be there. One was in a wheelchair at the time. They obviously died a year later, but they got an opportunity to see their grandson playing for the team. They did volleyed up and down the country, abroad, you name it. And I didn't know they were there. It was a surprise after the game that I get told that both managed to be there. So I would always say the Hibs game at Celtic Park after the Rangers match, because it was always my dream just to do it once. And I obviously have done it many times after that. But that's the one that'll stick in my mind. I've got some fantastic memories, some not so good, but you try and put them in the back burner. I go now and I think to myself, probably the biggest trophy I've got is the fact that people describe me as Peter Grant at Celtic. That's probably the biggest trophy and accolade I can possibly have, and I'm very, very proud of that. You know, you probably don't realise that till later years. You know, you get away from it, but wherever I've went in the world, there's always people picking me out and went, oh, hello, Peter, how you doing? And then they'll talk to their kids or something, say, this guy played with Celtic and all that, wherever you're in the world. And that shows you how powerful Celtic Football Club is. And for me, I can take me to heaven. I'll be happy if that's where I go. If I go downstairs, hope the big man gives me a chance to get back upstairs.
I'm sure you're going up.
You know, and if I want to go up there, as I say, I'll be as happy as Larry with that fact that people describe me as Peter Grant of Celtic.
Peter, we've only touched on the Peter Grant story there. I'm sure there'll be more conversation when you're on stage in Rosie Maguire's in June at the end of the season, when we hope we're celebrating more silverware and you can share so many more memories with us. You're the first player to be announced for the festival. So I'm looking forward to chatting to you again. And we were there in September. I caught the end of the weekend. Or we were, yeah, last September, and you were over raising funds for the Kevin Bell Repatriation Fund. You had a golf classic. So fair play to you and the boys that raised that much needed money. And we'll be raising money again in June for charities. So until then, I'll hopefully bump into you on the road. I'm sure I will now that you're doing your media work. And till then, we'll talk soon, Peter.
Listen, I'm really looking forward to it. As I say, fantastic people. Colin and that getting over to Rosie McGuire's, and it's a fantastic time. And as you say, raising great money at a really important time. And I think that's the most important thing. The Celtic family have always done it, and it will always continue. And seeing supporters come and enjoying the crack is something fantastic. We go over the games, but they tell us about games, and that makes it so important to us as well. They've got magical memories, and sometimes it rejigs ours, and you think, oh, remember this. And I think that's so important. And I think it's the only way in life, football supporters and the players getting together, I think they realise that we're just the same as them. We're the supporters who was lucky enough maybe to have the jersey on. We love the company. We love the banter that goes on with it, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing everyone. It was a fantastic time over there a few months back, and I'm really looking forward to the same again.
And you're talking about jerseys. You're wearing the famous Rosie McGuire's jersey now.
Rosie McGuire's on today, if you can see it.
And it also has the famous Erigo Bra crest, the Belfast Supporters Club that Collie is involved in. So big shout out to them all.
Big shout out to them all at Rosie McGuire's. We're really looking forward to getting over there again and having a fantastic time as I did the last time.
Folks, that's June the 4th and the 7th. The tickets are on sale. It's going to be a fabulous weekend. And I'm sure Peter, he can't announce, but he'll be captaining a good team of ex-Celtic players that weekend.
Fantastic. Looking forward to Andrew. Looking forward to seeing you all.
Thank you, Peter.
God bless.